Jennifer Wilson stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom on Sylvania Avenue and didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. 340 pounds, 38 years old, a housewife with no college degree, no income of her own, no life outside this house. January in Toledo was particularly cold. Outside, sleet was falling. The temperature had dropped below freezing, but Jennifer hardly noticed the weather. She rarely left the house. Why should she? Carl brought home the groceries, paid the bills, took care of everything. He was a successful realtor at a premium agency, selling homes in North Toledo for $500,000 and up. His photo was featured on billboards along Highway 280. A handsome 42-year-old man with a perfect smile and the caption, "Carl Wilson, your dream home awaits you." At home, Carl didn't smile. "Did you order Chinese food again?" His voice came from the kitchen. Jennifer froze. She had forgotten to throw away the boxes. "Jenny, we talked about this. You promised to watch what you eat." She was silent. She had learned to be silent during 15 years of marriage. "I'm worried about your health." Carl appeared in the bedroom doorway, still in his business suit, his tie perfectly knotted. "Do you understand? I work from morning to night to provide for us, and you can't even take care of yourself. Dr. Remington talked about diabetes, about your heart." It was a familiar song. Carl always started with concern. He never yelled or openly insulted her. He just got disappointed, constantly. And somehow his disappointment was worse than yelling. That same evening, after Carl fell asleep, Jennifer sat in the kitchen with her laptop. The browser was open to the Perfect Form gym on Monroe Street. Photos of happy people lifting dumbbells, running on treadmills. First month free for new members. She had been looking at this page for 3 weeks in a row, but never found the courage to call. On Wednesday morning, January 23rd, when Carl left for a meeting with clients, Jennifer dialed the number. Perfect Form Gym turned out to be a small, clean space in a shopping center between a supermarket and a pharmacy. When Jennifer walked in, she was greeted by a young Asian woman at the front desk. "Welcome to Perfect Form. I'm Alyssa Chen, the manager. How can I help you?" Alyssa's voice was soft, almost shy. She looked about 29, slim, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a uniform polo shirt with the gym's logo. Something about her demeanor suggested a person who preferred to stay in the background. "I'd like to sign up," Jennifer said with some difficulty. "But I've never been to a gym before." "I understand," Alyssa smiled gently. "We offer consultations with a personal trainer. Morgan Cole is our best specialist. He works with people of all fitness levels." Morgan Cole appeared a few minutes later. 33 years old, athletic build, short dark hair. A former semi-professional baseball player, as he explained later, whose career ended due to a knee injury. But most importantly, he looked at Jennifer without pity or judgment. He simply assessed her professionally. "Tell me about your goals," he said, as they sat down in a small consultation office. "I want to," Jennifer faltered. What did she want? To lose weight? To become healthy? Or just to feel like she was in control of something in her life? "I want to change." Morgan nodded as if he understood more than she had said. "Then let's start small. 3 times a week, 45 minutes. We'll move at your pace." The first few months were hell. Every muscle ached. Jennifer could barely walk 10 minutes on the treadmill. But Morgan was patient. He didn't rush her, shame her, or compare her to others. He was just there, correcting her technique, encouraging her when she wanted to give up. Alyssa was always there too, a quiet presence behind the front desk. She smiled when Jennifer came in, asked about her progress, sometimes brought her a bottle of water. Between workouts, they would sometimes talk. Nothing special, just brief exchanges of pleasantries. Alyssa never talked much about herself. She seemed like someone who was used to listening rather than talking. At home, Carl initially supported the idea of the gym. "Great, honey. You're finally taking care of yourself," he said when she told him about signing up. But after a month, his tone changed. "Are you at the gym again? How many times a week do you go? 3? Isn't that too much? By April 2023, Jennifer had lost her first 15 pounds. It wasn't noticeable on her figure, but she could feel the difference. Morgan increased the intensity of her workouts. They started working with lighter weights and added cardio. He created a meal plan for her. Nothing extreme, just healthy portions, more protein, less processed food. "You're doing great," he said one day in June after they finished a particularly tough workout. "A lot of people give up at this stage, but you keep coming back. That's what matters most." Something in his voice made Jennifer feel warm inside. When was the last time Carl had praised her? She couldn't remember. In the summer of 2023, Jennifer began to notice changes. Her clothes were looser. She could climb stairs without gasping for breath. The number on the scale was slowly but steadily decreasing. 40 pounds, 50, 60. Carl noticed too. "You look good," he said in September, and there was something strange in his voice. Not joy, something else. "That trainer, what's his name, Morgan? He's doing a good job." "Yes," Jennifer replied cautiously. "He's a professional." "How old is he?" "I don't know. 33, I think." Carl nodded, but his jaw tightened. Jennifer knew that sign. It was starting. By January 2024, exactly 1 year after she started, Jennifer had lost 100 pounds. She weighed 240. Her body was different, not just smaller, but stronger. She could feel the muscles under her skin, the energy in her movements. Morgan was genuinely proud. "You've done an incredible job," he said, his hand touching her shoulder for a moment. "Seriously, Jennifer, it's inspiring." She caught herself thinking about him between workouts, how he laughed at her jokes, how patiently he explained technique, how he looked at her, not through her, but at her, like a person. It was dangerous, she knew, but she couldn't stop. Alyssa noticed too. One day in February, when Jennifer lingered after practice, talking to Morgan, she saw Alyssa watching them from behind the counter. A quick glance, almost imperceptible. But something about it made Jennifer feel uncomfortable. Things got worse at home. Carl started checking her phone, asking where she was going, who she was talking to. His comments became sharper. "You're changing," he said in March, and it didn't sound like a compliment. "You used to be simpler, calmer. Now you always have plans, places to go." "I just go to the gym, Carl. 3 times a week turned into 5. You spend more time there than at home, with that Morgan guy. He's my trainer. He's a man, Jennifer. Do you think I don't see the way you look at him?" She didn't answer, because he was right. In April, Carl started coming to the gym. Not inside. He just parked across the street in his black Lexus and waited. Jennifer saw him through the window when she left. He pretended to be on the phone, but she knew. He was watching. Morgan noticed the tension. "Everything okay at home?" he asked one day in May, after Jennifer could barely concentrate on her workout. "Yes," she lied. "Everything's fine." But everything was not fine. By July 2024, Jennifer had lost 120 pounds. She weighed 220, and for the first time in many years, could look at her reflection without hatred. But her marriage was falling apart. Carl had become cold and controlling. He checked the odometer on her car. He demanded to know exactly how much time she spent at the gym. "You forget who pays for all this," he said one evening when she came home at 8 p.m. after a long workout. "The gym, the groceries, this house, everything. Without me, you have nothing." He was right, and that was the scariest part. Jennifer had no job, no savings, nothing of her own. For 15 years, she had been completely dependent on him. At the gym, Alyssa continued to watch silently. Sometimes Jennifer caught her eye, a quick, appraising glance. She wanted to ask if everything was okay, but something stopped her. Alyssa had always been friendly, but distant. She was someone who kept her distance. Jennifer's transformation continued, but it wasn't just her body that was changing. Something deeper was changing, how she saw herself, what she wanted out of life. And these changes frightened more than just Carl. August 2024 brought a heat wave that lingered over Toledo for weeks. Jennifer Wilson weighed 210 pounds, 130 less than a year and a half ago. When she looked in the mirror now, she saw a different person. Not just thinner, but stronger, more confident, more alive. Morgan noticed it too. "You've changed more than just your appearance," he said one day after training, when they were alone in the gym. It was almost 9 in the evening, and the last visitors had already left. "You carry yourself differently. You look people in the eye. You smile." Jennifer felt warmth rising to her cheeks. They were standing too close. She knew it, but she didn't back away. "You helped me." Her voice was quiet. "More than just with my weight." Morgan was silent for a few seconds. Then his hand touched hers, lightly, almost imperceptibly. "Jennifer." What happened next seemed inevitable. The kiss was slow, cautious, as if both were afraid of what it meant. When they pulled apart, Jennifer saw something in his eyes, not just attraction, something deeper. They didn't notice Alyssa. She stood in the hallway leading to the locker rooms, documents in her hands. She saw everything. Her face showed no emotion as she quietly turned and walked away. The affair began in August, stolen moments after practice, text messages in the middle of the day. Morgan rented a small apartment on Summit Street, and sometimes when Carl was at client meetings, Jennifer would go there. She felt guilty, but she couldn't stop. With Morgan, she felt desired, important, alive. "I never planned this," he said one day in September as they lay in his bed. "You're not supposed to have relationships with clients. It's against the rules." "So I'm just a client?" Jennifer tried to joke, but her voice sounded uncertain. "No." Morgan turned to her, serious. "You're much more than that." Things at home were becoming unbearable. Carl sensed that something had changed. He didn't know the details, but he knew enough. On the evening of September 23rd, when Jennifer returned home at 10 p.m., Carl was waiting in the living room. The lights were off. "Where were you?" His voice was even but cold. "At the gym, I told you." "The gym closes at 9. Jennifer froze. Her heart was pounding. "Morgan and I were discussing a new training program." "Morgan?" Carl slowly stood up. "Always Morgan. Do you think I'm an idiot, Jennifer? Do you think I can't see?" He took a step closer, and for the first time in 15 years of marriage, Jennifer was physically afraid of him. Carl had never been aggressive, but something in his eyes was different now. "Carl, please." His hand grabbed her wrist, hard, painfully. "You're my wife. Have you forgotten that? I gave you everything. This house, a life without worries, and you thank me by fucking my personal trainer?" "Let me go." Jennifer tried to break free, but his grip was iron. "Or what? Will you leave? With what? You have nothing. No money, no job, no education. Who are you without me?" He let go of her so abruptly that she stumbled backward, hitting her back against the wall. Red marks remained on her wrist. "Go to bed." Carl returned to the sofa. "And no more training after 7 in the evening." By December 2024, Jennifer had lost 160 pounds. She weighed 180. Her body was almost unrecognizable, toned, athletic. But the bruises under her long sleeves told a different story. Carl didn't hit her, not enough to leave marks on her face, but he grabbed her, he pushed her, he controlled her. Morgan noticed the bruises in November. "What happened?" He gently touched her arm, where a purple mark peeked out from under her t-shirt sleeve. "Nothing. I bumped into something." "Jennifer." His voice was quiet but firm. "Don't lie to me." She cried. Right there in the gym, among the exercise machines and mirrors. Morgan hugged her, and she told him everything. "Get away from him," he said simply. "Right now. I can't. I don't have any money. I don't have a job. I have nowhere to go. Come to me. Come to me." Jennifer looked at him, not believing him. Morgan was serious. "I'm not kidding. I have an apartment. It's not luxurious, but it's big enough. We'll figure out the rest. But Jennifer wasn't ready. Not then. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of dependence. It's not so easy to leave, even when everything is falling apart. Alyssa Chen watched all this in silence. She saw the bruises. She saw Morgan and Jennifer whispering in the corner of the hall. She saw how they looked at each other, and something inside her broke a little more every day. A year ago, in January 2023, Alyssa and Morgan had an affair. It was short-lived and secret. Morgan had just come out of a serious relationship, and Alyssa had never been truly close to anyone. It started by accident. They stayed late after work, drank wine, and one thing led to another. 3 months. Alyssa thought it was important. She thought he felt the same way. But in April, Morgan said it would be better if they stayed friends, that he wasn't ready for a relationship, that she was wonderful, but he couldn't give her what she deserved. Alyssa agreed. She smiled. She said she understood. They continued to work together, professionally, politely. No one at the gym knew about their romance. No one noticed something die in Alyssa's eyes. And then Jennifer Wilson came along. Alyssa saw how Morgan looked at her. He had never looked at Alyssa like that, with admiration, with tenderness, with something real. She saw how patient he was with Jennifer, how he encouraged her, how proud he was of her every achievement. And Alyssa understood. She was just entertainment after the breakup. But Jennifer was the real thing. That realization was worse than physical pain. "Alyssa, are you okay?" Morgan asked one day in December, when he noticed she was staring into space for too long. "Yes," she replied with her usual quiet smile. "Just tired." He nodded and returned to Jennifer, who was waiting for him for another workout. Alyssa watched as he touched her shoulder as they laughed together, and she hated herself for not being able to stop watching. By March 2025, Jennifer weighed 155 pounds, 185 pounds in 2 years. Her transformation was complete. She looked 10 years younger and moved with an ease she had forgotten existed. But her marriage was dead. Carl was becoming increasingly paranoid. He checked her phone every night. He demanded her social media passwords. He controlled every dollar, every minute. The physical abuse intensified, bruises on her arms, on her sides, where no one would see them. "Maybe it's time you quit the gym," he said in April. "You've already achieved your goal, right? You've lost weight. Why continue?" "It's not just about weight, Carl. It's about health, about strength." "About Morgan, you mean?" They stared at each other across the kitchen table. The war that had been smoldering for months was about to erupt. "Yes," Jennifer said quietly but firmly. "About Morgan, too." Carl threw his mug across the room. It shattered against the wall next to Jennifer. Black coffee spilled onto the white wallpaper. "You're a bitch." His voice was low, dangerous. "An ungrateful bitch." He left, slamming the door behind him. Jennifer stood in the middle of the kitchen, trembling. Something inside her snapped. She took out her phone and texted Morgan, "I need to talk." They met at his apartment an hour later. Jennifer told him everything, about the abuse, the control, the fear. Morgan listened, his jaw clenched. "Enough," he said when she finished. "This ends now. Pack your things and leave. Today." "I don't have any money, Morgan. None. Everything is in his name. The house, the car, the bills. I have savings. I have a place. We'll figure out the money, the job, the lawyer. But you can't stay there. It's dangerous." Jennifer looked at him. This man, who had been just her coach 2 years ago, was now offering her everything. Shelter, support, a future. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because I love you," Morgan replied simply. "I've loved you since the moment you stopped apologizing for taking up space in this world." By August 2025, Jennifer had lost the last 15 pounds, 140 pounds, exactly 200 pounds in 2.5 years. Her body was athletic, healthy, strong, but her life was on the verge of exploding. She was still living with Carl. Every day was a battle, verbal, sometimes physical. He forbade her from going to the gym more than twice a week. He monitored the odometer on her car. He called her 10 times a day. But Jennifer began to plan her escape. Morgan helped her open a secret bank account. She found a divorce lawyer who gave her an initial consultation for free. She gathered documents, her marriage certificate, medical records, photos of bruises. Alyssa saw it all. She saw the dynamic change. She saw Jennifer become more confident. She saw Morgan look at her with such love that it hurt to watch. She heard their conversations about the future, about the apartment they would rent together, about the job Jennifer would find, about freedom. And every day, something inside Alyssa died a little more. She came to work with a smile. She did her job. She was the quiet, unobtrusive Alyssa she had always been. But inside, a coldness grew that she couldn't control. By mid-September 2025, everything was ready to explode. Jennifer decided that on September 15th, she would tell Carl about the divorce. Morgan promised to be on the phone, ready to come if anything went wrong. "Everything will be fine," he said, kissing her one last time before practice on September 13th. "Just a few more days and you'll be free." Alyssa stood behind the counter, pretending to check the computer. She heard every word. 2 days before the disaster. September 15th, 2025, was a Sunday. Jennifer woke up at 6 in the morning, even though the alarm clock wasn't set. Carl was sleeping next to her, his breathing steady and calm. She looked at him in the morning twilight and tried to remember the last time she had felt anything other than fear and disgust for this man. She got up quietly, went to the kitchen, and made coffee. Her hands trembled as she held the cup. Today, she would tell him. Carl came downstairs at 10. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair tousled. He usually didn't work on Sundays unless there were urgent property viewings. "Good morning." He poured himself some coffee without even looking at her. "Carl, we need to talk." Something in her voice made him stop. He turned slowly, studying her face. "About what?" "I want a divorce." Silence. Carl set his cup on the counter as carefully as if it might explode. "Say that again." His voice was quiet. "I want a divorce." "It's not working, Carl. It hasn't been for a long time. We both know that." "We both know that," he repeated, almost thoughtfully. Then he laughed. A short, sharp sound without a hint of amusement. "Are you serious? After everything I've done for you? After 15 years? That's exactly why. 15 years, and I can't live like this anymore." "You can't live like this?" Carl took a step closer. "In a house worth $400,000? With a car, food, everything you need? You can't live like this?" "You know what I'm talking about. Control, jealousy, abuse." "Abuse?" His face contorted. "I never hit you. The bruises on my arms say otherwise. That's not abuse. I was just trying to get through to you." "You stopped listening. You stopped respecting our marriage. Because there's nothing left in this marriage to respect." Carl moved so fast that Jennifer didn't have time to react. He grabbed her by the shoulders and pinned her against the wall. "You're not leaving." His face was inches from hers. "Do you hear me? Nowhere. You have no money, no job, nothing. I'll make sure you don't get a cent in the divorce. Lawyers will cost you tens of thousands that you don't have." "Let me go." Jennifer tried to break free, but he held her tight. "Is it because of him? Because of that coach? You think he wants you? He's just fucking a fat woman who pays him for attention." "I'm not fat. Not anymore." "You'll always be fat." Carl let her go so abruptly that she stumbled. "Inside, where it matters, and he'll see it. Sooner or later." He left the kitchen and went upstairs. A minute later, Jennifer heard the bedroom door slam, then the click of the lock. She stood leaning against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Her phone was on the table. She grabbed it and texted Morgan. "I told him. It was bad." The reply came 30 seconds later. "Get out of there, right now. I'll come get you." But Jennifer didn't leave. Not that day. She convinced herself that she needed to wait, to plan everything out properly. Morgan insisted, but she asked for a few days. Just a few days to gather important documents, to prepare. The next 6 days were hell. Carl practically locked her in the house. He took her car keys, saying she was in an unsafe psychological state. He canceled her credit card. He checked her phone every night, reading every message to Morgan. "You tell him you love him," Carl read aloud on Wednesday evening, September 18th. "I can't wait to be with you." It's touching, really. Too bad it will never happen. Jennifer tried to take the phone, but he kept it out of reach. "Give it back." "Or what? Call the police? Go ahead. Call them. Tell them how you're cheating on the husband who provides for you. Let's see who gets sympathy." She stopped arguing. It was useless. Instead, she made plans. On Thursday, while Carl was showering, she used his laptop to write to Morgan on social media. She said she would leave on Monday, the 23rd. She asked him to wait. Morgan replied, "I'll wait as long as it takes. But be careful. Please." Friday and Saturday passed in tense silence. Carl went to work, came home, checked that Jennifer was there. She barely ate, barely slept, just waited for Monday. But on Saturday evening, the 21st of September, something broke. Carl came home at 11 o'clock at night. He was drunk, which was rare for him. He smelled of whiskey and perfume that didn't belong to Jennifer. "Where have you been?" she asked from the sofa, where she was reading a book. "At a business dinner," he said, throwing his keys on the table. "None of your business." "You smell like women's perfume." "So what?" He turned to her, his eyes bloodshot. "Maybe I have a right to some company too, since my wife prefers the gym and some muscle-bound idiot." "You cheated on me." Carl laughed, long, hysterically. "Cheated? Jenny, I've been cheating on you for 5 years, at least. Do you think I could touch you when you weighed 300 pounds? It was physically disgusting to me." The words hit her like a slap in the face. Jennifer stood up. The book fell to the floor. 5 years? The secretary from the office, a couple of clients, even that waitress at the bar who always smiled at me. They're all better than you ever were. Something inside Jennifer snapped. Not anger. Something colder, clearer. "I'm leaving," she said calmly. "Tomorrow morning, and you won't stop me." "You're not going anywhere." Carl stepped toward the door, blocking her exit. "Ever. I'd rather kill you than let you go to him. Move away from the door." "No." They stood there for a few seconds. Then Jennifer turned and walked toward the stairs. She would go upstairs, lock herself in the guest bedroom, and wait until morning. But Carl followed her. "You can't just walk away from this conversation," he shouted, following her up the stairs. "You can't walk away from me." Jennifer went into the guest bedroom and tried to close the door, but Carl pushed her. The door swung open, hitting Jennifer on the shoulder. "Get out!" she yelled for the first time in years. "Get out of here! This is my house! Mine! You have nothing here!" He grabbed her hair and pulled her back. Pain exploded in her scalp. Jennifer instinctively pushed him away, putting all the strength that 2.5 years of training had given her into it. Carl stumbled and fell on his back in the hallway. They stared at each other, both gasping for breath. Something had changed. An invisible line had been crossed. "You hit me," Carl said quietly as he got up. "You hit me. You started it. I touched you. You hit me. See the difference?" He went to the bedroom and slammed the door. Jennifer heard him move something against the door from the inside. He was barricading himself in. She spent the rest of the night in the guest bedroom, unable to sleep. Outside the window, the sky was slowly brightening. Sunday, September 22nd. She decided, today, not Monday. Today, she would leave. At 5:30 a.m., she heard Carl leaving the bedroom. His footsteps on the stairs, the sound of the front door opening, the engine of a car. He was gone. Jennifer quickly got dressed in sportswear. She grabbed the bag of documents she had hidden under the bed. Her passport, birth certificate, medical records, photos of bruises. Everything she needed for the divorce. She called a taxi because Carl had taken her car keys. The taxi arrived at 5:50. Jennifer left the house without looking back, for the last time. "Where to?" asked the driver. "Perfect Form Gym on Monroe Street." The gym opened at 6 in the morning. By the time the taxi arrived, Morgan was already there. He had sent a message saying he would wait. He had a key because he sometimes opened the gym for early clients. Jennifer went inside at 5:58. Morgan was standing at the front desk, his face tense with worry. When he saw her, relief flashed in his eyes. "Are you okay?" He hugged her tightly. "I am now," Jennifer said, pressing herself against him. "Everything will be fine now." They sat down on a bench by the window. The sun was rising over Toledo, painting the sky pink and orange. Morgan held her hand. "Do you have your documents?" "Everything I need, in my bag." "Good. After your workout, we'll go to the lawyer. I've already made an appointment for 9 in the morning. Then we'll pick up your things from the house when Carla isn't there." "What if he comes back?" "I'll be with you, and we'll call the police if we need to. But you're not alone anymore, you understand? Never again." Jennifer nodded, feeling tears well up in her eyes. Tears of relief, not fear. "I need to get changed." She looked at her watch. 6:15. "I'll quickly go to the locker room, get changed, and we can start with a light workout. I need to move, to release the tension." "Of course, I'll prepare a program." Jennifer stood up and took her bag. Morgan kissed her on the forehead. "It's over," he whispered. "The worst is behind us." She walked through the gym to the women's locker room. The hallway was empty and quiet. It was too early for other visitors. She pushed open the locker room door and went inside. The lights turned on automatically. Rows of lockers, benches, mirrors. Everything was familiar. Safe. Jennifer put her bag on the bench and started to take out a clean t-shirt. Behind her, the locker room door opened quietly again. Alyssa Chen walked in. She had come to work at 6:20 a.m., 40 minutes earlier than usual. She hadn't slept all night. She lay in her small apartment on Secor Road, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the same thing. About Morgan. About Jennifer. About how things could have been different. She saw them through the window. She saw them hugging. She saw Morgan holding Jennifer's hand. She saw him looking at her with such love. Alyssa entered through the service entrance, which was always open to employees. No one saw her. Morgan was busy setting up equipment in the main hall. Alyssa walked quietly, her sneakers making no sound on the rubber floor. She stopped at the door to the women's locker room. Her hand rested on the doorknob. Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed the whole world must hear it. Inside, Jennifer was whistling a quiet tune. Happy, free, ready to start a new life. Alyssa pushed the door open and entered. Jennifer was standing with her back to the door, taking a clean t-shirt out of her bag, when she heard the locker room door open. She turned around, expecting to see an early gym goer. It was Alyssa. "Oh, hi," Jennifer smiled. "You're early today." Alyssa didn't answer. She just stood at the door, her face completely expressionless. She was holding something in her hand, a long piece of jump rope cord that usually lay in the equipment basket. "Alyssa?" Something in the atmosphere had changed. Jennifer felt a chill of fear. "Is everything okay?" "No." Alyssa's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Nothing is okay." She stepped forward so quickly that Jennifer didn't have time to react. The cord wrapped around her neck. Alyssa pulled back, and Jennifer fell to her knees, clutching her throat, trying to free herself. But Alyssa was stronger than she looked. She held the cord tightly, methodically, without emotion on her face. Jennifer tried to scream, but only a hoarse sound came out. She scratched at the cord, at her neck, trying to reach Alyssa behind her. Her lungs burned. The world began to darken at the edges. "He was mine," Alyssa whispered, leaning close to her ear. He was mine before you, and you took everything. The last thing Jennifer saw was her reflection in the mirror opposite. A woman who had finally become strong. A woman who was supposed to be free. Then darkness. Alyssa held the cord for another minute after Jennifer's body went limp. She wanted to be sure. Then she slowly let go, allowing the body to fall to the tiled floor. She crouched down next to it, staring at the dead face of the woman who had stolen her only chance at happiness. Something inside her was empty. Not remorse, not satisfaction, just emptiness. She stood up and put the cord in the pocket of the sweatshirt she was wearing over her work uniform. She looked around the locker room. Jennifer's bag was lying on the bench, its contents partially spilled out. Alyssa didn't touch anything. She just left the locker room and closed the door quietly. The hallway was empty. Morgan was still in the main hall. She could hear the sound of equipment running. Alyssa walked to the service entrance, went outside, walked around the building, and entered through the main entrance. "Good morning," she said to Morgan, who was setting up the treadmill. He looked back and smiled absently. "Oh, hi, Alyssa. I didn't hear you come in. You're early." "I had to sort through some paperwork, new contracts." "I see. Jennifer is in the locker room. She'll be out soon. We're about to start training." Alyssa nodded, walked over to the reception desk, and sat down at the computer. Her hands weren't shaking. Her heart was beating steadily. She opened the schedule spreadsheet and pretended to work. 15 minutes passed. 20. Morgan began to worry. "It's strange that she's taking so long." He looked at his watch. 6:45. "She usually gets changed faster." "Maybe you should check," Alyssa suggested, without taking her eyes off the screen. "I can't just walk into the women's locker room." "Knock, or I'll go." Alyssa got up and walked to the locker room. She knocked on the door. "Jennifer, are you there?" Silence. She pushed the door open, as if for the first time that morning. "Jennifer?" Then a scream. A loud, piercing scream of horror. Morgan ran across the hall. He burst into the corridor. "What happened?" Alyssa stood in the doorway of the locker room, her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide open. She pointed inside, unable to speak. Morgan pushed her aside and ran into the locker room, and froze. Jennifer was lying on the floor between the rows of lockers. Her face was blue, her eyes open and empty. There was a deep red gash around her neck. "No." He fell to his knees beside her. "No, no, no." "Jennifer." He checked her pulse. Nothing. He began CPR, desperately, even though somewhere deep down he knew it was too late. "Alyssa!" he shouted over his shoulder. "Call 911, now!" Alyssa took out her phone with trembling hands. She dialed the emergency number. Her voice was broken and frightened as she explained to the dispatcher what had happened. The ambulance and police arrived 8 minutes later. The paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. Jennifer Wilson, 38 years old, died of asphyxiation. The time of death was preliminarily estimated to be between 6:20 and 6:30 a.m. Detective Sarah Morris arrived at 7:20. 45 years old, gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, sharp brown eyes. 20 years with the Toledo Police Department, the last 10 in the homicide division. She had seen a lot, but every new body still touched something inside her. She entered the locker room, where the forensic team was already at work. They were photographing the body and collecting evidence. Morris crouched down next to the body, studying the marks on the victim's neck. "Strangulation," said the pathologist, a young man named Dr. Zhang. "With a noose. Judging by the marks, something like a cord or rope. Quick, almost professional." Signs of a brief struggle. Scratches on the neck from her own fingernails, abrasions on her knees. Time of death? Between 6:15 and 6:30. Rigor mortis is just beginning. The body is still warm. Morris nodded and stood up. She looked at the bag on the bench. Documents, some of which had spilled out. Passport, medical records, photos of bruises. She was planning to run away from someone, Morris said aloud. She left the changing room. In the main hall, two patrol officers were holding two men apart. One was athletic, wearing a tracksuit, his face red from crying. The other was in a business suit, more reserved, but his hands were shaking. Alyssa was sitting on a bench by the window, an officer standing next to her. She was looking at the floor, her arms wrapped around herself. Morris approached the patrol officer who had been the first to arrive on the scene. "What do we have?" "Officer Rodriguez." He flipped through his notebook. "The call came in at 6:53 from Alyssa Chen, the gym manager. She claims to have found the body at approximately 6:45. The man in uniform is Morgan Cole, the victim's personal trainer. He was here when it happened. The second man is Carl Wilson, the victim's husband. He came looking for her around 7:30. "Interesting." Morris looked at Carl. "How did he know she was here?" "He says he guessed. It's her usual spot." Morris approached Carl first. He was standing leaning against the wall, staring into space. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Detective Sarah Morris. I'm very sorry for your loss." Carl looked at her, his face strangely calm. "Is she dead?" "Yes, sir." "How?" "We're investigating." "May I ask you a few questions?" "Now? My wife just died." "That's why it's important to act quickly. Where were you this morning between 6 and 7 o'clock? Carl hesitated too long. "At home." "Can anyone confirm that?" "No, I was alone." "Your wife wasn't at home?" "We had a fight. She left early." "What time?" "I don't know. I was asleep." Morris studied his face. Something didn't add up. "But you knew where to find her." "She's always at that gym. With him." Carl nodded toward Morgan. "With Mr. Cole?" "With her lover." Morris wrote it down. A love triangle. A classic motive. She approached Morgan. He was sitting with his head in his hands. When she called out to him, he looked up, his eyes red, his face wet with tears. "Mr. Cole? Detective Morris." "I found her." His voice was hoarse. "I tried to save her, but it was too late." "Tell me what happened." "She came around 6. We talked. She was going to change. She went to the locker room at 6:15. I waited. When she didn't come out at 6:45, Alyssa went to check on her and found her." "Have you been here the whole time?" "Yes, in the main hall, setting up the equipment." "Did you see anyone else?" "No, it was too early. We had just opened." "What was your relationship with Miss Wilson?" Morgan hesitated. Then he said quietly, "I loved her. We were together. She was going to leave her husband. Today, we were going to start a new life." Morris nodded. The other side of the triangle. She approached Alyssa last. The young woman looked shocked, her face pale, her hands shaking. "Miss Chen, I'm Detective Morris." "It was horrible," Alyssa whispered. "I've never seen a dead person before." "I understand, it's hard. Tell me what happened this morning." "I came to work at 6:20, earlier than usual. I had to sort through some documents. I came in through the main entrance. Morgan was already here. We talked. Then I worked on the computer. Around 6:45, Morgan became concerned that Jennifer was taking a long time in the locker room. I went to check on her and found her." "Did you see anyone else? Hear anything unusual?" Alyssa shook her head. "No, no one." Morris was taking notes, but something caught her attention. Alyssa was speaking too smoothly, without hesitation, like a memorized script. The criminalist came out of the office holding a laptop. "Detective, you need to see this." They reviewed the surveillance camera footage. The gym had 4 cameras, at the main entrance, in the main hall, at the service entrance, and in the hallway. Not in the locker rooms, privacy rules. Morris watched the recordings from 6 in the morning. 6:02, Morgan enters through the main entrance. 6:05, turns on the lights in the hall, starts setting up the equipment. 6:08, a taxi pulls up to the building. Jennifer gets out. 6:10, Jennifer and Morgan talk by the window. The camera in the hall shows them talking, hugging. 6:15, Jennifer walks to the hallway leading to the locker rooms. She disappears from the camera's view in the hall. 6:17. The hallway camera shows Jennifer entering the women's locker room. 6:20. Movement at the service entrance. The door opens. A figure in a hoodie enters. Short, thin. Quickly passes the camera into the hallway. 6:21 p.m. The hallway camera does not show the figure. Blind spot. 6:34 p.m. The same figure exits through the service entrance. Quickly, head down. 6:38. The camera at the main entrance shows Alyssa entering. No hoodie, just her usual work uniform. She smiles at Morgan. "Stop," Morris said. "Rewind." Alyssa says she arrived at 6:20. The camera shows 6:38, the forensic scientist confirmed. 18 minutes difference. Morris looked at Alyssa, who was still sitting on the bench. Something in her story didn't add up. But now she had two obvious suspects. Carl Wilson, a jealous husband with a history of violence and no alibi. Morgan Cole, the lover, the last person to see the victim alive. Morris gave orders to the patrol officers. Detain both men for questioning. Mr. Cole for 24 hours. Mr. Wilson too. Check their clothes, hands, cars for evidence. Don't let Miss Chen go until I'm done with her. The next few hours were spent in interrogations. Carl Wilson sat in the interrogation room with his lawyer beside him. He refused to say anything more without his lawyer. "My client has nothing to hide," the lawyer, a dear man in a $3,000 suit, said calmly. "But in this situation, we will not answer questions without legal representation." Morris tried a different approach. "Mr. Wilson, we know about the bruises on your wife's body, about the domestic violence." Carl remained silent, but his jaw tightened. "We know she was going to leave you, for Mr. Cole. That gave you a motive." "My client is not answering," the lawyer interrupted. Morgan Cole, on the other hand, talked non-stop. He told everything, about the affair, about the plans, about how Jennifer was suffering. His sincerity seemed genuine, but Morris knew that the best liars are the most sincere. By evening, as the sun set over Toledo, Morris sat in her office studying the records, the testimony, the evidence. The two main suspects were Carl and Morgan. Both had a motive. Both had the opportunity. Neither had a clear alibi. But something bothered her. The figure in the sweatshirt in the video, the 18-minute discrepancy in Alyssa's testimony, her overly smooth, rehearsed story. Morris opened Alyssa Chen's file again. 29 years old, gym manager for 2 years, no criminal record, a quiet, unremarkable life. Too quiet? The detective took a blank notebook and began writing down questions. Tomorrow she would talk to Alyssa again, more carefully, more aggressively. Something didn't add up here, and Sarah Morris felt it with all the instincts she had developed over 20 years. Detective Sarah Morris spent the entire night from September 22nd to 23 in the office, watching the video recordings over and over again. The coffee in her cup next to the keyboard had gone cold, but she didn't notice. A figure in a hoodie, short, thin, enters at 6:20 through the service entrance. Hood pulled up, face not visible. Leaves at 6:34. Fast pace, head down. Morris measured the figure's height against the doorframe. Approximately 5 feet 4 inches. Weighed about 120 pounds. It matched Alice Chen's measurements. She opened the recordings from the other cameras, studying the chronology. At 6:38, Alyssa enters through the main entrance. No sweatshirt, just her usual uniform polo shirt. She smiles at Morgan, completely calm. 18 minutes. Where did those 18 minutes go? On the morning of September 23rd, Morris called Alyssa in for a second interview. The young woman arrived at the station at 9 a.m., looking tired but composed. "Miss Chen, thank you for coming." Morris pointed to the chair opposite her. "I need to clarify some details." "Of course." Alyssa sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "You said you arrived at work at 6:20, through the main entrance." "Yes." "But the camera at the main entrance shows that you entered at 6:38. Alyssa blinked. A barely noticeable pause. I must have misread the time. It was probably 6:38. 18 minutes is a big mistake. I was in shock. After what happened, I could have gotten confused. Morris nodded, opened her laptop, and turned the screen toward Alyssa. Take a look at this. On the screen was a figure in a hoodie entering through the service entrance at 6:20. Is that you? Alyssa stared at the screen for a long time. Too long. No, I don't know who that is. Do you have a hoodie, Miss Chen? Everyone has hoodies. A gray one with a hood? With the gym logo? Alyssa was silent. Morris leaned forward. Miss Chen, I've been on the police force for 20 years. I know when people are lying, and you are lying. Why? I'm not lying. Then let's try something else. What was your relationship with Morgan Cole? Something flashed in Alyssa's eyes. Pain. Quick, sharp, almost imperceptible. Working. We're colleagues. Just colleagues? Yes. Morris opened the folder and took out the printed messages. She requested a warrant for the phone records of all 3 suspects that night. The tech department worked quickly. This is correspondence between you and Morgan Cole, January 2023. Alyssa paled as she looked at the pages. Last night was special, Morris read aloud. I can't stop thinking about you. Are these your words? Silence. You had an affair with Morgan Cole, correct? January to April 2023. Alyssa closed her eyes. Yes, I did. Why didn't you mention this yesterday? It was a long time ago. It's irrelevant to what happened. Irrelevant? Morris leaned back in her chair. You were in love with a man who dumped you. Then he started a relationship with another woman, with Jennifer Wilson, and that woman was found dead in the gym where you work. Do you really think it's unrelated? He didn't dump me. We just decided to stay friends. Was that your decision or his? Alyssa didn't answer. Her hands clenched into fists on her lap. Morris softened her voice. Alyssa, I understand. You loved him. You probably still do. And he chose someone else. That hurts. I understand that pain. You don't understand anything. Alyssa's voice was quiet, but there was anger in it. You don't know what it's like to be invisible. Always. Everywhere. People look right through me, as if I'm not there. Morgan was the only one who saw me. Really saw me. And then she came along. Jennifer. Jennifer. Alyssa repeated the name bitterly. At first, she was just another client. A fat, unhappy housewife. But Morgan looked at her differently. He was proud of her progress. He praised her. I watched him fall in love, month after month. And I stood behind the counter and watched him forget I existed. That must have been hard. You have no idea. Morris leaned forward. What happened on the morning of September 22nd, Alyssa? Nothing. I already told you. No. Tell me the truth. You came in through the service entrance at 6:20, wearing a sweatshirt. You went into the locker room where Jennifer was. What happened next? Alyssa was silent, her breathing quickening. You saw them that night, didn't you? Morgan and Jennifer. They were talking about the future, about an apartment, about a new life together. You heard everything. I didn't want to. Didn't want to what? Kill her, Alyssa shouted, and the word hung in the air of the interrogation room. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Morris didn't move. Tell me what happened. Alyssa covered her face with her hands. When she spoke, her voice was muffled, broken. I didn't sleep all night. I thought about them, about how happy they would be, about how I would be left alone. Again. Always alone. I came early. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see them one last time before they left together. I went in through the service entrance. I saw them through the window, hugging, laughing. So happy. She fell silent, wiping away her tears. I didn't plan it, I swear. I just went inside. I took the cord from the jump rope. I don't know why. I went to the locker room. Jennifer was there, alone. She turned around and smiled at me. She said, "Oh, hi, you're early today." As if we were friends. As if she hadn't ruined my life. "And you?" I didn't think. I just acted. The cord was in my hands, then around her neck. She fought back, but I'm stronger than I look. I've been training my whole life. And I held on. I held on until she stopped moving. Alyssa looked up at Morris, her face wet with tears. I didn't want to, but she took the only thing I had, the only person who saw me. Morris wrote down every word. When Alyssa fell silent, the detective asked quietly, "What did you do after that?" I put the cord in my hoodie pocket. I left through the service entrance. I walked around the building. I took off my sweatshirt and hid it in my car. I entered through the main entrance as if I had just arrived. I acted normal. I waited. Then I went to check the locker room. I found the body. I screamed. Everything was a blur. "Where's the cord now?" "In the trash can behind my apartment. In the sweatshirt." Morris nodded to the patrolman at the door. He went out to send for his team. "Alyssa Chen, you are under arrest for the murder of Jennifer Wilson. You have the right to remain silent." The trial took place 4 months later, January 2026. The prosecutor sought a first-degree murder charge, but Alyssa's lawyer convinced the jury that it was a crime of passion, not premeditated. Second-degree murder. Sentence: 25 years in prison with no parole for the first 15 years. Alyssa stood as the judge read the sentence. Her face was calm, almost relieved, as if the weight of the lie had finally lifted from her shoulders. Carl Wilson sat in the courtroom throughout the trial. When the sentence was announced, he simply got up and left. He didn't say a word to anyone. A month later, he sold his house on Sylvan Avenue and moved to Columbus. His colleagues said he had changed. He was quieter, more distant. His photos disappeared from billboards. Morgan Cole closed the Perfect Form gym a week after Alyssa's arrest. He couldn't bring himself to return to the place where Jennifer had died. He moved to Cleveland and found a job at a rehabilitation center. His therapist said it would take years for him to cope with the trauma and guilt. Guilt for not protecting the woman he loved. Detective Sarah Morris closed the case and moved on to the next one. In Toledo, there were always new crimes, new victims, new killers. But sometimes, late at night in the office, she thought about Alyssa Chen, about the quiet woman whom no one noticed, about how invisibility can turn into rage. The story of Jennifer Wilson, a woman who lost 200 pounds and found the strength to change her life, ended in tragedy in a cold gym locker room. She was one step away from freedom, one step away from a new life.